Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with turkey rice. That's right, welcome to another annual installment of What the Heck Do I Do with the Rest of This Leftover Turkey? And for me, what really makes a recipe using leftover holiday turkey great is that, of course, not only should it look and taste good, but it should also be very simple to make and not have a lot of ingredients. Plus, and just as importantly, it should be different enough so as not to remind us of the meal where the leftovers came from. And this simple but amazing turkey rice checks all those boxes. So with that, let's go ahead and toss whatever leftover turkey we have in a soup pot, which for me were a thigh and a leg, and a few assorted scraps of white meat. And then to this we will add 4 cups of chicken broth or stock, or of course turkey broth or stock. Which reminds me, if you've already picked all the meat off the bones and made a proper stock, you can obviously skip ahead to the cooking the rice part. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and toss in a diced onion, and then bring this up to a simmer on high heat. And by the way, if you're wondering if I pulled the skin off that thigh and wrapped it around some stuffing and ate it like that, yes, I did. Good guess. And then what we'll do once things start to bubble is back our heat down to medium-low, at which point we'll cover this, and we will simmer it for about an hour, or until our meat is pretty much fallen off the bones. And because we don't have a ton of liquid in this, and the meat is not fully covered, it's never a bad idea about halfway through to uncover this, and maybe turn those pieces over. So I did that. And you probably should as well. And I don't know about you, but it's tough for me to just let something sit on the stove for an hour and not touch it or do something to it. So even if this doesn't make a huge difference to the final product, I'm still a fan of the maneuver. And that's it, we'll simply cover that back up and let it continue simmering for another half hour or so, or until, like I said, that meat is pretty much fallen off the bone. And once we do reach that stage, we'll go ahead and remove our meat and bones to a bowl, which I did mostly with these tongs, but a better tool would be something called a spider, which is what we call in the business one of these round, long-handled strainer things. And if there's a foodie in your family that doesn't have one of these, that would make a great gift. But anyway, once we remove our meat, we'll go ahead and let that cool, at least enough so we can pull it off the bone and cut it up. And then what we'll do while we're waiting for that is bring our liquid back to a boil over high heat, at which point we're going to stir in about 3/4 of a cup of white rice. And this time I'm actually using a medium grain rice, but I usually use long grain, which works beautifully, as by the way would a short grain rice. The only difference being the cooking times, which you will of course adjust. But anyway, once that's been stirred in, we can go ahead and season this up a little bit with a little bit of freshly ground black pepper, as well as a little touch of cayenne, and of course a big pinch of salt. And then what we'll do at this point is lower our heat to medium, and we'll let our rice cook for about 10 minutes to give it a little bit of a head start before we add our turkey back in. Speaking of which, while our rice is simmering for that 10 minutes, we can go back and pick that meat off the bone. And of course, as we pull that meat off, we always want to be looking for small bones, cartilage, and assorted tendons, since those things are a lawsuit waiting to happen. And that's it. Once we have a nice pile of meat, we'll go ahead and chop that up as big or small as we want. And right here, you're going to get a great look at how big I wanted my pieces. And at this point, we'll head back to the stove to check our rice, which after about 10 minutes is not going to be cooked yet, of course. But as you can see, it has started to plump up. And at this point, we are free to go ahead and stir in our turkey meat. And if we so choose, maybe another splash of stock or broth. And of course, that's going to depend on how thick you want this. All right, I do sort of want this kind of thick when it's cooked, but not super bend the spoon thick. So yes, I did splash in another splash, since after stirring and observing, I thought it needed another splash. But of course, you're going to take a look at yours and decide for yourself. I mean, you are, after all, the Curious George of your turkey rice porridge, which, by the way, really is what this recipe should be called. But it's not, because I don't know much, but I do know that not that many people are going to click on a link for turkey rice porridge. But anyway, once we have everything stirred in, we will adjust our heat to somewhere between medium and medium-low, and cook this stirring for another, 10 or 15 minutes, or until that rice is as tender as we want. And we can do that from anywhere between just barely tender, all the way to absolutely soft and falling apart. And in case you're keeping score at home, I like to go somewhere in between. And then what I like to do while my rice finishes cooking is take some green onions, some sliced hot or sweet red chilies, and a little bit of freshly picked herb like cilantro. And I like to make this sort of quick, colorful, vibrant salsa for the top. And what we'll do first is slice our onions. And then once those are broken down, we'll toss on our peppers. And we'll continue chopping until we have those into a fairly fine dice. At which point we will toss over our herbs, and continue chopping until this is as fine as we want. And why I'm really hoping you do this technically optional step is because great dishes are so often about contrast. And when you consider what we're going to be serving up, which is something that's hot and soft and rich and kind of sticky, and as we mentioned, kind of porridge-like, what better contrast than topping it with something like this? So to summarize, take the extra 5 minutes and make this. And that's it. We'll head back to the stove, where, as you may remember, our rice and turkey is cooking until we think it's done, as judged by you. And besides deciding when it's at the perfect texture, we're also, of course, going to taste for seasoning, since this might and probably will need a little more salt. So I went ahead and adjusted mine and deemed it absolutely perfect and exactly how I wanted it, which means we can go ahead and serve that up in hopefully a warm bowl, and then top it with whatever we're calling our onion, pepper, herb mixture. I mean, I guess it's a salsa, but it's also sort of gremolata-like. So maybe it's actually a salsalada. But anyway, we will top that off, and then grab a spoon and dig right in. And there are literally thousands of things you can make with leftover turkey. But this, my friends, besides a sandwich, might be my favorite. It is just so simple and warm and comforting, and addictively sticky. But not sticky from the starch in the rice. All right, a little bit from that. But sticky from all the gelatin produced by all the connective tissue in that dark meat. All right, that really is what makes this so satisfying and delicious. And again, topping it with those freshly chopped flavorful bits really elevates this to a whole other level. And of course, we could also use this as a catch-all for any leftover veggies we might have around as well. But you know what? This is so absolutely perfect just like this. I don't really think I want any chopped up green beans and sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts in this. All right, it's called turkey rice, not turkey rice and stuff. So my official recommendation is to eat it just like this. Oh, and one last thing I should mention here. I enjoy this with a very high ratio of meat to rice. All right, this is almost literally half and half, which is why earlier we didn't use a ton of liquid to simmer our turkey in. So for me, that's another key. I kind of want this to be a meat with rice dish, not a rice with meat dish. But regardless of how much meat you put in, I really do hope you give this very simple, easy, comforting, and very delicious turkey rice recipe a try soon. So please follow the links below to get the ingredient amounts, a written printable recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.